Hello folks, I hope you're all doing well. It is a lovely Sunday morning here today. It's a little bit cool. Overnight temperatures are really dropping down today, but weirdly the temperatures during the day have been really warm still. I mean, it's the middle of November nearly, and here in Scotland we're still getting sort of temperatures between 12 to 15 degrees, which it's just not right for this time of year. You know, it's a bit odd. I saw a video from Steve at Greenside Up the other day, and he's still harvesting tomatoes at this time of year. So things are a little bit odd. I mean, last weekend we had our first frost, and it was a really light frost. And I think there was 2 days when you would class it as cold. But since then, it's been really windy, and we've had this really sort of muggy, balmy sort of weather, which has been really odd. It's quite fresh now because it's 8 o'clock in the morning and the sun's not really properly up there. It's going to be another beautiful day. There's not a cloud in the sky at the moment. But speaking of the wind, we've got a bit of a disaster over here. Look at this. One of the pea and bean frames has been absolutely battered sort of over here. You can see it's come out of the stake over there. Luckily, I don't think there's actually any damage. I think it's just blown over and it looks like a bit of a tangled mess. So that's going to need a little bit of sorting out, which is no bother. It's just a case of picking it up and putting it back in place, and it'll be fine. But anyway, today's job, I'm going to get some of the garlic out. So you might remember a few weeks ago I talked about the garlic that I got and what I was doing with it, and a lot of people just put garlic out, they'll just stick it out and let it go, and that's great. It works a treat. I like to start mine off in little cell trays first and get it going before it gets planted out, because there's problems around here with pigeons and them pulling it out of the ground if it looks like worms, if it's just got little shoots on. I like it to get nice and established, like to have good root system on it and a nice green top before I put it out anywhere. So I've got 2 trays. I've got one tray I've got 4 bulbs of elephant garlic, which is the big garlic, and I've got some of the normal garlic whose name evades me. I will have a look in the tray when I bring it over. So anyway, we're going to use one of these beds here. If I can crouch down in this jaunty angle and not damage my back or something, in this one here with the lid on it. So what I will do, I will go and grab the tripod and whatnot. We'll get set up and we'll get some of this garlic put out. So I'll be back with you in just a jiffy. So as I mentioned before, this bed, it was prepped just a couple of weeks ago, and I'll pop a little link up there, or maybe it's up there, depends which way the camera's pointing. I don't know, I never get that right. I always point with the wrong hand to the link that pops out at the top. But I'll pop a little link out that shows you how I prepped this bed. There's not much to it. It's pretty much how I do a lot of the beds around here. But one of the things I did was take out all the little weeds, and there's quite a few already started to come back. But such is life and gardens, that if there's one thing you're guaranteed, what is it they say, death and taxes? You can also guarantee that there'll be millions of little blooming weeds going in my beds. I can guarantee you that. But this is a no dig bed, so the weeds are dead easy just to pull out with your fingertips there, and there is quite a lot of them. So what I might do is I might just give the surface, because like I say, this is a no dig bed. I'm just going to break the surface up there, and I'm doing it with this little trowel because I'm being lazy, because the shed's just over there and I should probably go and get the hoe just to run the hoe over it. But because these weeds are so small and so shallow, because I only did the bed over a couple of weeks ago, I don't really need to get down to any kind of depth to break them up and to get them sort of, I guess the aim with that is to get them tipped upside down so the roots aren't in the soil, and then the weeds die off in theory. So we'll just give it a little bit of a scrape over there, and I'll just try and get that leveled out just a little bit more. There we go, easy as that. And this is the garlic here that I've been growing in these little cell trays, and I said I would check the variety, and this one is the extra early white, which might explain why this one is the one that's looking the best so far. And you can see they're looking great there, they're looking absolutely fab. And another advantage of putting them out in a cell tray like this is when you start them off like this, any that don't sprout you can just get rid of, so you don't have to worry about it. So you've already tested it, you haven't put it in the ground, it's not taking up any space, so you've got a full bed of only sort of productive crops. The other thing to be mindful of when starting them off in the cell trays is the roots can get very big very quickly. Now I was guilty of this last year, and I got some of them sort of root bound in these little cell trays. Now I think I've caught these ones just in time. The roots are starting to pop out down the bottom there, but they're nowhere near as bad as they were last year. And this garlic here that we got from the Isle of Wight, from the garlic farm, it's looking pretty good actually. You know, that's a nice big bulb there, and I'm just gonna tease those roots there. They were slightly wound round, not too bad. I'm just gonna loosen them off a tiny little bit, and then starting in the back left, we'll dig a bit of a hole, and my good old favourite bloodfish and bone, we'll just pop a bit of that in there. I'll pop the garlic in, and I'll pick the camera up in a bit and I'll show you how this is going to look, because maybe the angle from where you are is not the greatest, but I'm not going to entirely bury the clove there of the garlic, and I'll show you just about how deep I'm putting it, because I'm still, again, one of the other reasons I start them off in these little cell trays is, like I say, the weather's been a bit odd around here recently, and when I first put these out, I don't remember, I think it was, oh God, was it October? Was it the start of October? About the start of October, I think. So they've maybe had about a month to 6 weeks, which is what I was aiming for them to be in here. And during October, certainly there's a couple of weeks when it's really, really, really wet. It was absolutely torrential rain for a couple of weeks. And what I don't want to do is have the garlic rot on me when I've spent money on getting good quality sort of seed garlic. Do you call it seed garlic? I don't know what you call it, something like that anyway. To go out, and I don't want it to sit in sodden ground for weeks on end and it just rots. So these are actually looking really good, and because they're established, if it does get really, really wet, then they've got a really good chance of surviving any sort of onslaught from the weather or anything else that might take a fancy to them. So I'm going to pop them in there. What I'll do now is I'm going to whiz around the rest of this bed. I won't bore you with it because I've got probably a good sort of 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, about 20 cloves here to put out, which is maybe just about the right amount for one of these raised beds, these pallet collars that we use. So whiz around there, we'll get them all planted out. I'll show you how I'm going to finish it off. So I'll be back with you in just a jiffy. Right, so that's the garlic in, and let me just bring you down here and spin you around and show you how it looks. So this is it here. You can see we've got our rows and columns, and they're around about probably about 6 inches apart thereabouts, roughly, kind of. I honestly couldn't tell you what it says on the packet or what the instructions are for planting garlic, but what I have done here is I've laid it out, and I've used the same process that I've used for the last 2 to 3 years on this site, in this bed, for growing garlic, and it's turned out absolutely smashing. So it's just a case of rinse and repeat. And I think every time I do this, I say I'm using the same process, you learn a little bit more. Every year you learn a little bit more about what sort of time you should put it in, or how much fertilizer to use, or what your soil needs, or what spacing to do. And what you can see is, as well, if we get a little bit closer, it's just how I've sort of planted them. So the cloves there, the individual cloves, are just in the ground, kind of just poking up. They're not entirely buried in the soil. They're just poking their heads up a little bit there. And again, that's I don't know what it says on the packet. That's just how I've done it for the last few years, and they've turned out smashing. So rinse and repeat. And I was thinking about talking about this, and let me spin you around so we get me and the garlic at the same time. And there's a lot said at the moment about the cost of living crisis, and I thought, garlic's a really good example of something you can grow and how you can save money. Now, the reason I was swithering about talking about it is because garlic is not what I'd call an essential item. It's a bit of a luxury item. It's nice to have garlic, but it's a good example of, you can get one bulb of garlic, and I can split it up into, say, 10 cloves. And in theory, if you grow it properly, each one of those cloves should grow into a bulb in its own right. So then you've got another 10 cloves of garlic in each bulb, and you've multiplied your garlic by 10-fold. And it's an absolutely brilliant example of how growing your own stuff can help. Yeah, I mean, I faff on a bit round here. I've got raised beds, I've got hoop house lids and compost and chicken manure and stuff like that, but you can go a little bit simpler, you can go a little bit easier, and it'll still grow and it'll still give you something back, which is perhaps something to think about with other crops as well. Because I say garlic's maybe is a bit of an iffy example, because everything's just more expensive the day. I was complaining to the wife the other day because I go and get soup, a particular type of soup from Sainsbury's for my lunch, working from home most of the time. You know, soup's a good option for lunch, and this week alone the tin of soup went up 10 pence. Now I don't believe all of that is just the cost of the ingredients and whatnot. Some of that, for a tin of soup that cost 55p to go up 10p to 65p, there has to be a degree of profiteering in that as well. For it to go up, it's not the fact it's gone up from 55p to 65p, it's the percentage of the original cost that it's gone up by. And you know, you see all sorts of things at the moment. There's a lot said about people going on strike and pay rises and things like that. And I was reading about something called fiscal drag, I think it was called, and it's when people get pay rises, the government don't put at the base level of tax, so it's kind of a stealth tax. So your wages go up, so everybody pays more tax because they don't lower the bottom tax bracket, which I never knew about, and it was something I found. So that's costing, you think you're getting a pay rise, but yet people are paying more tax on that pay rise, so you think you get more money, but you're not actually getting as much as you think. Anyway, that's more than enough of me waffling on about things. So you can see them there in that bed. Let me turn you around there. That ends today's political announcement. So what we need to do is bring over the lid there, and it'll just sit on top like that. And the reason we pull the lid over is if I spin round, we've got these big trees over here, and in these big trees live a lot of pigeons, and the pigeons like to come over here, and maybe it's when they're not as well established as that. Let me show you the elephant garlic over here. They come along and they see the little green stalks sort of popping up like this. Here's the elephant garlic here. It doesn't look very impressive, but I've got some enviromesh that I'm going to pull over the top of it when I'm done with it, and you can see it's just a little poking up, and the pigeons think, oh, look at those little worms wiggling away down there, and they come along and they don't nibble it, they sort of peck at it and pull it up, and they obviously realise once they've done that it's not worms. They don't eat it. It doesn't really damage it, but what it does is it unbeds it, unroots it, and they sort of toss them around, and you've got to come back and put them all in. It disturbs it, and it's maybe it's not optimal, is maybe what I would say. So yeah, so I like to keep them covered up until they're well established and we've got some nice big long green shoots, so the pigeons aren't as much as a pest. Anyway, I think that's me just about done for today. Got a few other bits and pieces to tidy up. Then I'm off home to do some painting. Such is life. We get all these wonderful jobs to do. Anyway, if you want to see how the stuff gets on, how the garlic gets on, the winter projects and things we're going to be doing over the next few weeks and months into next year, please think about subscribing. It's absolutely free. Just click the red button down below. If you like this video in particular, give us the thumbs up, or if you want to leave us some comments down below. What are you up to? What are you doing at this time of year? Are you just staying in bed on a Sunday morning, or are you getting up and doing something interesting? Anyway, thank you very much for watching, folks, and I will see you on the next one. Bye for now.